I was 22 years old, working the coat check at the Golden Dragon restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown, when I witnessed something that changed my understanding of what human beings are capable of. It was March 14th, 1965, 11:47 at night, and only 13 people saw what happened in those 6 seconds. For 60 years, we kept this story quiet. Some of us took oaths. Others simply understood that certain truths carry weight too heavy for casual telling. But I'm 77 now, and the men who asked for our silence have long since passed. What Bruce Lee did that night wasn't just about fighting, it was about shattering illusions that entire systems depend upon. And if there was ever a time this story needed telling, it's now. The Golden Dragon occupied 3 floors of a brick building on Grant Avenue, wedged between a herb shop that smelled of dried ginseng and a tailor who specialized in traditional silk garments. The restaurant itself served as neutral ground in a neighborhood where territorial boundaries mattered, where different martial arts schools maintained careful distance, and where reputation determined whether you walked freely or watched your back. The ground floor contained the main dining room with its red lacquered columns, jade sculptures catching candlelight, and round tables that seated 8 beneath crystal chandeliers originally imported from Hong Kong in 1952. The second floor housed private rooms for business meetings, gambling sessions, and celebrations requiring discretion. The third floor, where I worked the coat check, featured a smaller dining area reserved for late-night patrons and a bar that stayed open until 2 in the morning. The floors were black marble with gold veining, polished to mirror brightness that reflected the amber glow of wall sconces. The air carried layers of scent. Szechuan peppercorns, soy sauce caramelizing on wok surfaces, cigarette smoke, and the jasmine perfume worn by the hostesses who guided guests to tables. Background noise consisted of Cantonese conversation, the clatter of chopsticks on porcelain, and occasional bursts of laughter from private rooms where business negotiations concluded successfully or gambling losses demanded philosophical acceptance. Tommy Chen ran security for the Golden Dragon, a position requiring diplomatic skills as much as physical capability. He stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighed 230 pounds, and had worked as an enforcer for 3 different tongs before the restaurant owners recognized his talent for preventing violence rather than inflicting it. Tommy understood that his presence deterred most trouble, that his reputation preceded him, and that actual confrontation represented failure of preventative measures. He moved through the restaurant with deliberate calm, nodding to regulars, assessing strangers, reading group dynamics before tensions escalated into incidents. His black suit fit perfectly despite his muscular build. His white shirt remained spotless through entire shifts, and his hands stayed visible and relaxed unless circumstances demanded otherwise. But Tommy reported to someone else. The real power behind Golden Dragon security resided in Marcus Washington, a man whose reputation extended far beyond Chinatown into boxing gyms, street corners, and underground fighting circuits throughout the Bay Area. Marcus stood 6 feet 5 inches tall, weighed 310 pounds, and carried muscle mass distributed across a frame, suggesting Viking ancestry despite his surname. His skin showed scars from 15 years of professional fighting, his knuckles bore the flattened topology of repeated impact, and his eyes revealed the particular weariness of men who've hurt too many people to remember them all. Marcus had fought professionally as heavyweight boxer between 1948 and 1959, accumulating 32 wins with 28 knockouts before a detached retina ended his career during a match against Cleveland Williams. After boxing, he transitioned to security work, where his size alone prevented most confrontations before they started. But unlike Tommy's diplomatic approach, Marcus believed intimidation functioned through demonstrated capability rather than mere presence. He enjoyed testing people, establishing dominance hierarchies, and reminding everyone within radius that physical power ultimately governed situations where social conventions collapsed. He worked the third floor specifically because late-night crowds contained higher percentages of drunk patrons, gangsters conducting business, and outsiders unfamiliar with neighborhood protocols. The restaurant owners valued him for exactly the quality that made others uncomfortable. Marcus didn't prevent violence through wisdom. He prevented it through overwhelming force capacity that made challenging him seem suicidal. And in 10 years working the Golden Dragon, no one had been foolish enough to test whether his reputation matched reality until Bruce Lee walked in at 11:37 on that March night. Bruce entered the third floor with three of his students. James Lee, no relation but sharing a surname that created conversational confusion. Alan Joe, a welterweight boxer who'd begun studying Jeet Kune Do after watching Bruce dismantle his defensive strategy in a friendly match. And Ted Wong, a University of California student who'd been training with Bruce for 8 months. The four men wore casual clothes, suggesting they'd come from workout session rather than formal event. Bruce wore dark slacks and a simple white dress shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that showed muscle definition suggestive of low body fat and high functional strength. He stood 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighed 135 pounds, and moved with the economical precision of someone who'd eliminated unnecessary motion from every gesture. I noticed him immediately, not because I recognized him. I wouldn't learn his name until later, but because he carried himself differently than anyone else in the restaurant. Most people entering the Golden Dragon showed awareness of the space, assessed potential threats, and adjusted their bearing accordingly. Bruce entered like he was alone. Like the 100 other people in the room existed in separate dimension he could see through but not be touched by. His eyes moved constantly but without anxiety, cataloging information without broadcasting intention. When hostess approached to seat his party, he smiled with genuine warmth that transformed his face from intense to welcoming, thanked her by name after reading her badge, and followed toward a corner table that offered sightlines to both entrances and the bar. They ordered tea and small plates, talking quietly while candlelight threw shadows across white tablecloth. I couldn't hear their conversation from the coat check desk 15 feet away, but their body language suggested comfortable friendship rather than formal meeting. James Lee gestured animatedly while speaking. Alan Joe laughed at something Bruce said, and Ted Wong took notes in a small journal he produced from jacket pocket. The dynamic revealed Bruce as center of constellation, not through dominating conversation, but through quality of attention others directed toward him. When he spoke, the others leaned forward. When they asked questions, he answered with complete focus that suggested their inquiry mattered more than anything else occurring in the building. Marcus noticed them too, but for different reasons. He stood at his usual position near the bar, surveying the room with the bored vigilance of experienced security professional. But his eyes kept returning to Bruce's table, narrowing slightly, calculating something. I would learn later what triggered his attention. It wasn't recognition or threat assessment, it was the challenge implicit in Bruce's composure. Marcus had spent 10 years training people through his presence to feel smaller, to accept their subordinate position in the room's hierarchy, to acknowledge his physical dominance through subtle cues of deference. Bruce gave no such signals. He didn't challenge Marcus directly, didn't stare or posture. He simply declined to participate in the unspoken protocol that Marcus enforced through intimidation, and that refusal itself constituted challenge in Marcus's worldview. At 11:42, Marcus walked over to their table. He moved deliberately, allowing his size to announce approach, using his shadow to fall across their tablecloth before his voice reached them. When he arrived, he positioned himself directly behind Bruce, forcing Bruce to turn in his seat to make eye contact or accept the dominant position Marcus occupied. The words he spoke would be repeated by all 13 witnesses with remarkable consistency, suggesting they carried particular significance that etched themselves into memory through what followed. Marcus said, "You're in the wrong place, friend. Third floor's for people who can handle themselves. You look like you'd get hurt if someone sneezed on you." The insult carried layered meanings beyond surface content. It challenged Bruce's physical presence, questioned his right to occupy the space, and suggested his companions had brought inadequate friend to adult venue. The delivery combined casual dismissiveness with underlying threat, technique Marcus had refined through hundreds of similar interactions. Most people responded with immediate compliance, apologizing and moving downstairs, or they attempted defensive posturing that justified escalation. Bruce did neither. He turned in his chair slowly, creating quarter rotation that brought him face to Marcus without rushing or telegraphing concern. His expression remained neutral but attentive, giving Marcus complete focus without conveying submission or aggression. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly despite low volume, accent combining Hong Kong origins with California inflections acquired through 6 years in the United States. Bruce said, "I appreciate your concern for my safety, but I think I'll be fine here." The response disarmed Marcus's expected reaction patterns. By acknowledging Marcus's stated motivation while declining his implied command, Bruce avoided both submission and confrontation while maintaining his position. The statement carried undertones suggesting amusement rather than fear, implying Bruce found the interaction mildly entertaining rather than threatening. This tone shift caught Marcus off balance, revealed in momentary hesitation before he continued. Marcus leaned down slightly, bringing his face closer to Bruce's, using proximity and size differential to create physical pressure. His voice dropped lower, intended for Bruce's ears, though several nearby tables could hear. "I'm not suggesting, friend. I'm telling you. Move downstairs or leave. Your choice." James Lee started to stand, his body language suggesting intervention intention, but Bruce raised one hand slightly, palm down, gestures small enough that others might miss it, but communicating clearly to his companion. "Remain seated. Let this develop." Bruce's eyes never left Marcus's face, maintaining eye contact without blinking or looking away, technique that unnerved people accustomed to using stares for dominance. Bruce said, "If I'm violating some rule I'm not aware of, I apologize. Could you explain what I'm doing wrong besides being smaller than you think I should be?" The question trapped Marcus in logical dilemma. If he admitted size alone, determined who could occupy the third floor, he revealed arbitrary discrimination. If he claimed other violations, Bruce could demand specifics. The phrasing also reframed the confrontation from authority enforcement to explanatory conversation, shifting power dynamics subtly but significantly. And the casual acknowledgement of size difference, without defensiveness, suggested Bruce found his own stature irrelevant to capability assessment. Marcus straightened up, his jaw tightening in a way that signaled patience, exhaustion. His hands, which had remained at his sides throughout the interaction, now crossed over his chest, classic dominance posture that emphasized his arm circumference and shoulder width. The scar tissue across his knuckles caught candlelight, drawing attention to hands that had ended 32 professional fights. He said, "You're doing nothing wrong, except not understanding how things work here. I run security, I decide who stays. And I'm deciding you're too small to be on this floor with the kind of people who come through late at night. It's for your protection. Now move." The explicit claim that size equaled security need finally brought conflict to surface level, where it could no longer hide behind polite phrasing. Marcus had stated his governing principle: physical size determined safety, power, and right to occupy space. Bruce's response would either accept this hierarchy or challenge it directly. Bruce stood up slowly, motion controlled and economical, rising from seated position without using hands for assistance or shifting his balance point visibly. Standing, he emphasized rather than minimized height differential, his 5 feet 7 inches highlighting Marcus's 6 feet 5 inches. He stepped away from the table, creating open space between himself and his students, and turned to face Marcus squarely. When he spoke, his voice remained calm, but acquired edge that changed atmospheric pressure in surrounding area. Conversations at nearby tables stopped, people sensing confrontation moving toward resolution. Bruce said, "I understand exactly how things work here. You use your size to make people feel small, and most of them accept it because fighting you seems impossible. But size doesn't determine who can handle themselves. Skill does. Timing does. Understanding does. And I respectfully decline to leave." The room temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. Marcus's face shifted from condescension to cold anger, the expression of someone whose fundamental worldview had been challenged by a creature he'd dismissed as irrelevant. His hands uncrossed, dropping to his sides, fingers flexing slightly in unconscious preparation for violence. The movement rippled through surrounding space like earthquake tremor that animals sense before humans register consciously. Tommy Chen appeared from stairwell, his security sense alerting him to escalation before visible signs emerged. He assessed situation instantly, Marcus confronting small Asian man who stood his ground, nearby patrons watching with mixture of anticipation and concern, opportunity for diplomatic resolution narrowing by the second. Tommy moved toward them with speed that contradicted his size, his hands raised in placating gesture aimed at both men. But Marcus spoke before Tommy arrived, his voice carrying authority that came from decade of enforcing boundaries through intimidation. He said, "You want to prove that size doesn't matter? Fine. Come with me to the kitchen hallway. If you can last 30 seconds, you can have whatever table you want. If you can't, you leave and don't come back. Unless you're scared." The challenge violated every protocol Tommy had established for the Golden Dragon. Sanctioned fights in kitchen hallways meant property damage, police attention, and neighborhood gossip that damaged the restaurant's neutral ground reputation. But Marcus's phrasing trapped everyone present in honor culture logic. Refusing the challenge confirmed cowardice and validated size-based hierarchy. Accepting it risked injury but offered possibility of proving claims. And with 30 witnesses now watching, backing down meant permanent reputation damage for both men. Bruce looked at Tommy, his expression acknowledging the security chief's position and giving him opportunity to intervene. Tommy stood frozen, caught between loyalty to Marcus, responsibility to restaurant owners, and growing suspicion that he was watching something unprecedented develop. His face showed internal calculation, weighing intervention against allowing situation to resolve itself. After 3 seconds that felt like minutes, Tommy nodded once, barely perceptible movement that communicated reluctant permission. Bruce turned back to Marcus and said, 30 seconds. Kitchen hallway. But understand something, I won't hurt you unless you force me to. This can end with both of us walking away. The offer of mercy before combat had even begun represented either supreme confidence or delusional miscalculation. Marcus laughed, genuine bark of amusement at statement he found incomprehensibly naive. Several other patrons joined him, releasing nervous energy through laughter at the absurdity of 135-pound man offering to protect 310-pound professional fighter from injury. Marcus said, "You're going to worry about hurting me? Kid, I'm going to try not to kill you. Let's go." The procession to the kitchen hallway created strange parade that would etch itself into every witness's memory with hallucinogenic clarity. Marcus led, his massive frame clearing path through tables as people unconsciously moved aside. Bruce followed 3 paces behind, his students flanking him but maintaining silence that suggested confidence in outcome. Tommy brought up the rear, his face showing resignation to disaster he couldn't prevent but felt obligated to witness. Other patrons stood and followed, abandoning meals and conversations, drawn by primal magnetism of impending violence. The kitchen hallway connected the third-floor dining area to the service elevator and storage rooms, measuring 40 feet long and 9 feet wide, with concrete floor painted institutional gray and walls lined with steel shelving holding extra plates, linens, and dry goods. Fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh illumination that eliminated shadows and created flat, documentary lighting quality. The air smelled of sesame oil, ginger, and industrial cleanser, temperature 10 degrees cooler than dining room due to proximity to walk-in refrigerator. The acoustics amplified sound, making every footstep echo and creating natural amphitheater effect. Marcus positioned himself at one end of the hallway, rolling his shoulders and cracking his neck in preparation ritual he'd performed before hundreds of fights. His hands balled into fists, then relaxed, then reformed, muscle memory activating patterns etched by 15 years of professional boxing. His stance widened slightly, weight distributing onto balls of his feet, body organizing itself into fighting configuration without conscious thought. Bruce stood at the opposite end, 40 feet of concrete between them, his posture unchanged from dining room. He made no preparation movements, didn't stretch or bounce or crack knuckles. His breathing remained even and deep. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, and his expression conveyed neither fear nor excitement. He looked like man waiting for bus, not preparing for confrontation with opponent twice his mass. Tommy positioned himself along one wall, equidistant from both men, his hand near the watch on his wrist to time the 30-second agreement. The witnesses lined both walls, creating human corridor, their faces showing excitement mixed with horror at spectacle they demanded through their presence. James Lee, Alan Joe, and Ted Wong stood near Bruce's end, their expressions suggesting complete confidence that made surrounding crowd question whether they understood the physics involved. Marcus spoke first, voice echoing in the hallway. 30 seconds, starting when I move. Try not to die too quick. Bruce's response came quiet but clear. I'll give you opportunity to stop this before it starts. Once we begin, there's no going back. The offer registered as final insult for Marcus, suggestion that mercy remained available from the smaller man, implying superiority that combat hadn't yet validated. His face flushed, veins becoming visible along his temples, anger transforming his features from threatening to murderous. He'd stopped dozens of men with that expression alone, visual promise of violence so overwhelming that fighting seemed pointless. But Bruce's eyes never changed, never showed the fear that Marcus's appearance was designed to trigger. Tommy called out, "On 3, 1, 2, 3. Marcus exploded forward with speed that shocked everyone who'd underestimated how fast 300 pounds could move when powered by professional athlete conditioning and fury. He covered the first 15 feet in less than 2 seconds, his footsteps hitting concrete like hammers, his fists already raising into guard position that had protected him through 87 professional rounds. His strategy was simple. Close distance, use reach advantage to jab until Bruce's guard opened, then deliver power shots that would end fight before 30-second clock mattered. He'd executed this approach successfully against men with longer reach, better training, and more experience. Against someone Bruce's size, it seemed inevitable rather than strategic. But Bruce didn't retreat or raise his hands into conventional guard. Instead, he moved forward, not toward collision course but at angle that took him outside Marcus's straight-line attack vector. The movement was minimal, perhaps 8 inches to his right, but executed with timing that meant Marcus's leading left jab swept through empty space where Bruce's head had been microseconds earlier. The displacement required Bruce to predict Marcus's attack trajectory and speed before visual confirmation could provide data suggesting either supernatural reflexes or deep understanding of how boxers establish range and throw opening combinations. Marcus adjusted, his training allowing him to recover from missed jab and throw follow-up right hand without losing momentum. But Bruce had already moved again, this time sliding forward and inside Marcus's guard, eliminating the reach advantage by occupying space too close for punches to generate power. To outside observers, it looked like Bruce had teleported, appearing suddenly within inches of Marcus's chest, where no human should willingly position themselves relative to larger opponent. What happened next occurred in less than 3 seconds of real time, but would require several minutes to describe adequately because Bruce's actions contained layers of technique invisible to untrained observers. Bruce's right hand moved first, not as punch, but as deflection, making contact with Marcus's right elbow as the power shot came forward. The touch was light, barely qualifying as pressure, but precisely timed to redirect Marcus's momentum slightly away from Bruce's centerline. This deflection violated Boxer's expectation that his power hand would land or be blocked, creating moment of confusion where Marcus's kinesthetic awareness contradicted visual input. Simultaneously, Bruce's left hand moved upward in motion that appeared to be palm strike aimed at Marcus's jaw. Marcus began defensive response, bringing his right hand back to block the strike, but Bruce's hand stopped 6 inches from contact and instead tapped the back of Marcus's wrist, gentle contact that communicated message rather than damage. The message was unmistakable. I could have hit you there and chose not to. Before Marcus could process this information, Bruce's right foot moved forward, stepping between Marcus's feet and compromising his stable base. The movement wasn't sweep or kick, but simply occupying space that disrupted Marcus's weight distribution and balance maintenance. Professional boxers maintain balance through foot positioning drilled into unconscious competence through thousands of hours of practice. Bruce violated that geometry, and Marcus stumbled slightly, catching himself, but losing the offensive initiative. Bruce stepped back, creating space again, resetting to neutral position 15 feet away. His breathing remained unchanged, his expression showing neither satisfaction nor concern. He raised both hands slightly, palms facing Marcus, universal gesture for stop or wait. When he spoke, his voice carried no triumph or mockery, only sincere offer. He said, "That's enough. You felt it. I could have hurt you 3 different ways in those 3 seconds. You're skilled, but this isn't the fight you think it is. We can stop now." The crowd lining the walls made collective sound, exhalation of held breath releasing as people processed what they'd witnessed. Tommy's face showed shock that he tried to mask professionally. James Lee smiled slightly, expression suggesting he'd seen this before and knew what came next. But Marcus's face revealed confusion, transforming rapidly into rage at being toyed with, at having his most refined skills neutralized by someone he dismissed as irrelevant. Marcus charged again, abandoning boxing technique for raw aggression, hands reaching to grab rather than punch, strategy acknowledging that Bruce's mobility advantage required clinch warfare where size and strength would dominate. This tactical adjustment demonstrated Marcus's fighting intelligence despite his emotional state. Many men would have continued throwing ineffective punches. Marcus recognized that grappling neutralized speed advantages and allowed him to use his 310 pounds as weapon itself. But Bruce had anticipated this evolution. As Marcus lunged forward with arms extended to secure clinch, Bruce dropped his body height by 8 inches through knee bend that looked like sudden squat, taking himself below Marcus's grasp while remaining mobile rather than committed to ground position. The movement required quadriceps strength to maintain stability at lowered height, flexibility to achieve the position without losing balance, and absolute calm under pressure to execute technique while large, angry man attempted to grab him. Marcus's hands closed on empty air where Bruce's shoulders had been. His momentum carried him forward, stumbling slightly as his grasping attempt met no resistance. Bruce rose smoothly from lowered position and stepped to Marcus's left side, now completely outside his attacking line and positioned at angle where Marcus would need to turn his entire body to re-engage. The repositioning took 1 second. Bruce used it to demonstrate second mercy teaching. His left hand tapped Marcus's right kidney area, light contact barely qualifying as touch, but placed precisely on on target, that kidney punch could cause serious internal injury. The tap communicated, I could have struck here and chose not to. His right hand moved upward, stopping 1 inch from Marcus's exposed jaw hinge, where properly angled strike could cause knockout or jaw break. The proximity communicated, I could have hit here and chose not to. Bruce stepped back again, creating separation, resetting to neutral space. But this time, his expression changed slightly, sadness replacing neutrality, like teacher watching promising student fail to learn obvious lesson. When he spoke, his voice carried disappointment that cut deeper than mockery would have. He said, "You're proving my point for me. Size isn't protecting you. Your training is, but even that's not enough when you're fighting someone who's eliminated the unnecessary movements. Stop now, please."